Hey guys, if you're watching this, I assume that you have already watched the first 3 videos in the compressor murder trilogy. If not, you might want to go back and watch them. It just makes the story a little bit funner. But this is the compressor from that unit. This is the murdered compressor, and today we are going to perform an autopsy. Now it's been about a month, maybe a month and a half since I completed the final repair on that unit where I replaced the evaporator coil. And honestly, I've been trying to do this video. I wanted to do it much sooner, but it was just kind of a busy last month and a half as cooling season and kind of tapered off and heating season began. So here we are today. Anyway, for those of you who haven't seen that trilogy, don't know what's going on, this compressor was murdered because somebody put a filter dryer on the hot gas discharge line, which basically turned into a restriction and allowed all the oil, or majority of the oil from the compressor, to be logged in the condensing coil. And when it did that, of course, the compressor overheated, blew out all 3 of the terminals. There was probably acid in the system, all sorts of fun stuff. My pistons in the evaporator coil got plugged up. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty brutal breakdown. But anyway, without further ado, let's cut this open. All right, so the cuts aren't as pretty as I was hoping, but we got a majority of the shell off. Still sitting on that bearing down at the bottom. Now some of this, this black stuff, some of these metal shavings is from the cutting open process, but I believe a majority of it is just from the unit, from the compressor just overheating all that time and running mostly without oil in it. If you look down there, there's just a little bit of oil in there, not much at all. So what I think I'm going to do next, I'm going to cut these bolts off. I'm going to pop this top part of the scroll off and just look around inside there and see what it looks like. All right, guys. Well, it took a little bit of elbow grease, but I was finally able to separate this scroll plate, or scroll plates rather. So there's our top plate. There, of course, is our bottom plate. And those of you who maybe aren't too familiar with scrolls, let me give you a brief rundown. So right here, this is our suction line. So our suction gas would come in from our evaporator, go into this, right through here. See, there's nothing that goes through there. So it'd go in through here, come up into the compressor shell, and the suction gas also would help cool down the motor. So anyway, we have suction gas coming in through here into our compressor shell, and it would come up into this side of the scroll plate. Of course, this would be flipped upside down like so. It would come in through this side, and as this bottom plate rotates, because this bottom, or this top one is stationary. This bottom one would rotate. So as this bottom one's moving around and rotating, that suction gas moves through here and it's compressed along the way. It's compressed and compressed and compressed. And then finally, once it gets to the very center point, it's compressed out the top, right out of this discharge port. See if you can see through there. See, that's our discharge port. Now this discharge port is connected to this hole that is on the dome of our scroll. So our discharge gas comes out of there after it's gone through the entire scroll plate. It's compressed, comes out of there. Then it comes out of our discharge port, our hot gas discharge line, which goes into our compressor. Or in this case, it went into our filter dryer and then into our compressor. Now another thing I wanted to point out is, I'm sure you've noticed that there's a lot of metal shavings and carbon buildup around this compressor, like all this around the motor. All of our electronics are just fried. They're just falling apart. All the wiring is just toasted. And that is mostly due to the unit basically running without oil. I believe what happened is the unit, once the filter dryer plugged up and became a restriction, the oil logged in the condenser, and then our compressor was running without oil, so it just overheated. And when the pistons in the evaporator started to plug up, then we were not moving as much refrigerant. So on top of the compressor running hot because it was low on oil, it began running hot because it wasn't getting the proper suction gas to help cool it off. So, and then we just had a catastrophic meltdown. All our wiring is just toasted in there. That's amazing. Very cool. All this could have been prevented basically if the previous technician had put the filter dryer in the right spot and probably done, practical refrigeration practices like flowing nitrogen while they're brazing and whatnot. Now the other thing I wanted to point out too is if you look down inside the scroll plate, you see that little bit of oil, a little bit of gunk that's in there. Now up until a few minutes ago, this scroll plate was sealed on top of this scroll plate. So there was no way, as I'm cutting it open, there's no way for the metal shavings, all the gunk to really get inside of this scroll plate. So all that carbon buildup, all that gunk that you're seeing in there right now was there while the unit was running, was there while the compressor was trying to compress refrigerant. Now if we go over here and we look down inside there, it's even worse. All that gunk inside there, that was there as the unit was trying to run, as it was trying to cool down all summer long rather. And see this oil that formed basically like a wet seal on top of the, or with the top scroll plate. This oil's, it's like sticky. It's definitely thick, obviously from being overheated for who knows how long. And then if we look really, really down inside there, you'll see there's a little bit of carbon buildup on this inner wall, carbon flakes in there, just from the compressor overheating and carbonizing, the oil carbonizing and burning up along the inner sides of this scroll plate. I'm kind of surprised I don't see any etching or any copper plating whatsoever, but let's set this down for a second. So you can just feel how sticky that oil is. Let's check now these scrolls, I'm not an expert on dismantling these scrolls. I've only taken one apart before, but this right here, if you see the slop in this, that doesn't seem normal. It seems like that should be tight in there. So if I pull this off and we kind of get a close-up of this, it looks like it's pretty badly worn around this bottom edge. So I'm pretty sure that's part of the catastrophic breakdown this unit experienced. Let's see if this... Get that right out of there. Yeah, if we look at that looks pretty badly worn. And there's just flakes of, sorry, get that camera back in there for you. So yeah, there's just flakes of carbon and sludge, I mean, right there. And again, this inner stuff that we're seeing was sealed up, so it shouldn't be that affected by the process of cutting open the shell. But yeah, you see just sludge right inside there. All right, guys. Well, that wraps it up. I hope you enjoy watching this autopsy, the autopsy of this murdered compressor. I hope you enjoyed seeing what happens when you put a filter dryer on a hot gas discharge line and what sort of effects it has on the internal components of the compressor. This is probably the worst burnout I've ever seen, and it was pretty nice to actually be able to cut it open and see internally what happens to it, especially on a scroll where all that gunk was just saved inside, all the metal shavings and carbonized oil that we could see. So it was a pretty good time for me. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you have any comments, any tips, anything you think I missed, let me know. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this, all right? So thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.